All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Florida Writers Book Expo. My name is Michael Farrell, and I'm a director of the Florida Writers Association. FWA is an all-volunteer, nonprofit group for all writers at all levels. We do writing conferences, workshops, webinars, podcasts, and events like this one. Thank you for joining us here, where we have 60 booths across genres with some amazing authors for you to meet. And I'm joined by one of those wonderful authors, Kip Cassino. Since his birth in New York City, Kip Cassino has traveled the world. He's run factories in Israel and Hong Kong, studied art in Munich, and assembled nuclear weapons in South Korea. The author of 4 novels, he has moved to Boca Raton since his wife's passing. So let's get started with our interview. How are you feeling today, Kip?
I'm pushing right along.
Awesome, that's great. So let's get started with the questions. How did you start your writing?
Well, I've wanted to write for a long time. And after I retired from the company I helped start, I decided to do it to keep my mind working.
Awesome. So according to your website, kipcassino.com, you're a writer, author, researcher, and veteran. So could you tell us how your experiences make it into your writing?
Everybody writes what they know, whether they mean to do it or not. And of course, my writing is based on everything I've seen and tried to learn during my life.
Awesome. So, how more specifically, how would your experiences affect your voice in your writing, the way that you tell the stories?
Well, when I write, my voice is really the voice of the characters. I try to understand the characters and let them speak through the book, and that makes it very easy to write. And of course, people don't do things that are against what they think their best interests are. So I listen to what those are and write it down.
Awesome. Sounds awesome. So are there any, besides being a researcher and a veteran, is there anything else in your life that you incorporate into your writing?
Well, I think my love of my children and my love of my wonderful wife Helen, now gone, something from every one of the people I've met and known.
All right, then. So are there any stories from your childhood that you think kind of proved you were going to grow up to be an author?
Well, I was always a big writer, a big reader, and I love to write, and I started writing for the school newspaper early on, and I knew I would always end up writing.
Awesome. So what's the best thing about being an author?
Best thing about being an author is it keeps your mind really busy. And you really get engaged with what you're doing. And of course, as an old newspaper guy, I don't get writer's block, because the one thing they teach you in the newspaper is you got to meet deadline. So I am able to put out at least 5 pages a day, and sometimes 10, no matter what I'm feeling like going in.
Awesome. So could you tell us some more about your background with researching journalism?
Well, I started out as a newspaper reporter because my wife was an editor of a paper, a publisher, and I had always wanted to do it, so I started out doing it, and I got to like it. But then my previous work as a researcher kicked in, and I started doing research for newspapers and got pretty good at it.
Awesome. All right, so we actually have some questions from the viewer. Let's see. Is his sound coming from 2 places? Do you hear an echo by any chance?
No.
Okay. Do you travel a lot doing research?
I used to. But nowadays with Google and some other sources, you don't have to travel an awful lot to do the research. It's really amazing that all of this information is at your fingertips. But yeah, I've traveled all over the world, and I think that worldview does make it easy for me to write about what I write about.
Awesome. Okay, so besides the best thing about being an author, what's the biggest challenge of being an author?
Biggest challenge of being an author is writing characters that make sense and coming up with good ideas.
All right, awesome. So what inspired your most popular book?
It's hard to say what my most popular book is, but every one of my books, including, I guess, the most popular, is out of plots and ideas that I've had running around in my head sometimes for 40 years. So I've honed those plots and honed those ideas now, and now, thank God, I'm allowed to put them down.
Okay, also, here's another question. Do you find interesting character models in your travels?
Yes. Every person you meet, if you're smart enough to realize it, is interesting and has a backstory that's worth knowing, and has a lot to tell you. So if you're smart enough to be a good observer, you'll come away with a lot of ideas that eventually will work their way into what you write.
Awesome. So let's see, what other questions do we have here? Why do you think people watching will enjoy your most recent book?
Oh, I think they'll enjoy my most recent book because it comes at what's going on in the world from a very, very new direction. The idea that older folks are kind of out of the picture and playing bocce and sitting back is a wrong idea, I think. I think older folks really want to be part of what's going on in the world, and this book shows it.
Awesome. So another question from the audience. What is your favorite genre to read or write?
I read voraciously, and I read lots of stuff, various fiction, nonfiction. I like alternative history. I think it's interesting when people try to take the world and take it apart and put it back together again in a slightly new way. I love John Fowles because of his ways of putting his philosophy into his books and really creating emotion out of his readers. But I like everything I read. I used to be a lot more picky about what I picked up out of the library. I'm not anymore. I just like to read whatever's in front of me.
Awesome. So let's see, what else do we have here? What was the most fun thing for you to write?
Oh, gee. Probably the newspaper writing I did. That was fun because you had to come up. It was a little small town paper I worked for, and you had to come up with 5 stories a day and get them in by 5 in the afternoon. So you had to come up with great ideas and put them down and get the interviews done and get all your research done and get back to it, and that was lots of fun.
Awesome. Another question here. What is your most recent book?
Most recent book is Old Dogs. And it's a thriller, and it's about the CIA running out of money and having to call in some of the old volunteers that have been writing in and pleading for work.
Awesome. Very interesting concept. Another question from the audience. How many books have you had published?
3. And I'm working on a 4th right now.
Awesome. And how has publishing been for you in your experience?
It's a tough thing, and I self-publish. And of course, there's frustrations no matter how you do it. Anybody who writes wants a lot of people to read what he's written, unless he just wants to read it himself all the time. And it's tough to get attention. And marketing is probably the worst, toughest part of it.
Awesome. So what kind of stories did you write for the paper?
Oh, I wrote all kinds of stories. Everything from murders and accidents on the lake to stories about how old people couldn't get their medical care, to stories about scams with vacuum cleaner salesmen, to you name it.
Interesting. Do you struggle with the marketing side of self-publishing?
Yes, I do. When my wonderful wife and life partner was alive, she did most of it for me. And now that she's in a better place, I'm in a worse place because I'm not as capable at doing it as she was.
Right.
And there's so many scams out there. So many people writing every day saying, you should have a picture made, and it will only cost you a smaller amount of a bigger sum. And they're all scams. And I recommend to everybody who's writing, go to Writer Beware before you answer anybody's letter. All of the scam sites are on that site. And you shouldn't respond to anybody who's listed on that site.
That's very helpful advice. Any tips on the marketing side?
The start early. In fact, you can start marketing your book before you've even finished writing it. And I would recommend that you start early and keep on doing it. And it costs some money. Have a nice website, the best you can. Spend some money in getting that the way you need it to be. And then be persistent and realize you're going to have to spend 3 or 4 hours a day doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely you got to put a lot of time into it.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So another question here: do you write short stories as well as books?
Yeah, I've had some short stories published, mostly science fiction. I had a short story published in Analog, and I love my short stories. But the frustrating thing about a short story is you got to keep them short. And if they're more than about 3,000 words, it's hard to place them. Unless you're going to write your own anthology.
Right. Are you hoping to have your writing journey become your income career?
Not really. I'm blessed that I don't need that, and my family has put me in a nice little cabana by a pool, so I don't have to worry about that for the rest of my life. I just like people to read it.
Awesome. So speaking of that, why do you think the people watching will enjoy your most popular book?
I think they'll enjoy either The Narrow Man or Buddies because they look at what is going on in the minds of the characters. This is actually a look, The Narrow Man is actually a look inside the mind of a very, very mentally ill man who's trying to make his life right. And Buddies is a look into the mind of two Misty and are trying to make their way across the nation.
Awesome. So do you have any more advice for people who are thinking of becoming authors?
Right. The only way you'll get any better at it is by doing it and doing it more and listening to critique and criticism. Away from it, understand it and absorb it and react to it. People aren't trying to tell you what they're trying to tell you if they're honest with you because they don't like you. They're trying to tell you things because that's the way they feel about what they've seen in your work. And writing is an emotional exercise. So understand and absorb what you're hearing and write every day. and you'll get better at it.
Yeah, that's very good advice. Is there any, I guess, tips about critique, about like receiving feedback or anything that you would share to aspiring authors?
Sure. Get your book criticized professionally, and listen to what the critics are telling you. They don't have any axe to grind. They're trying to make your book better. So get that kind of advice. Don't depend on people around you as much as you depend on these professional critics. They're easy to get a hold of. It costs you a little money, but it's money well spent.
Totally agree. So speaking of which, one of the questions from our viewers, are you in any critique groups and how many?
I'm not in any critique groups. I might like to try it, though.
And that's definitely that would definitely be one way to get some useful feedback, I'd say.
Yes, I agree.
Awesome. So we've talked about your past and what you're currently doing now. What do you think is next for you in the future for your writing career?
I am going to continue writing at least one book a year, as long as God lets me.
Awesome.
And I have plenty of ideas stored away, some of which I've been cooking around for a long, long time. So I have plenty to write about. I'm not afraid of running out of books to write.
That's great. All right, so another question from the audience. Where was your favorite place to travel to in your research?
Oh, my. I always love universities. I especially love the University of California, Santa Barbara, because it was just such a beautiful place. On the one side, you had an ocean and a beautiful beach, and you look the other way, and you're looking at these incredible mountains. Just beautiful. But any college you go to, you absorb the energy of the young people around you. The college libraries are normally very, very good, and the librarians are very helpful. So I'd say that's about the best place to go.
Awesome. And does that show itself in any of your writing?
I think it does, yeah.
Awesome. So another comment. Are you thinking of writing a science fiction book?
I'm writing one right now. And
awesome.
I'm about 20,000 words into it. Folks who are at this fair can get a look at it. It's on my little booth. So you can get a look at it. It's called Gleaners, and it's about what killed the dinosaurs.
Oh, awesome. I think I've seen on your website that you mentioned you've also written screenplays.
Yes.
Could you tell us more about that?
I had one I wrote. I had one I wrote in the 90s. That was very well received, but the agent at the agency would not take the project forward because she said it's too realistic. People might look at this and actually figure out a way to kill a lot of people, because it was the plot was people being killed by Arab terrorists using direct mail.
Oh.
So anyway, that one didn't get published, but I'm still working on it.
Awesome. So do book ideas ever wake you up in the middle of the night?
Sometimes I get my best ideas in dreams. They don't wake me up in the middle of the night. Very little does, now that I'm older. But I sure get up, fired up to make them work.
Awesome. And have you done many book signings?
I've only done two, and they were very lonely experiences.
Oh. Could you tell us more about that?
Well, I sat at a table, and I had my books out, and I had my pen, and I had I guess I had about 10 people come to me each time, and several of them were only looking for directions to other places.
I see. All right. Well, let's see. So, looks like our time is almost up. So, once again, I want to thank you, Kip, for joining us.
My
It was a
pleasure.
pleasure talking to you. For those watching, please be sure to stop by his booth and check out his books at FloridaWritersBooks.com. You can also check out his website, KipCassino.com. There'll be a link to it in his booth. We'll also have more live interviews right here on Crowdcast, so you can check back later in 2 hours, in fact. And if you're interested in learning more about the Florida Writers Association, you can visit floridawriters.org. So once again, thank you, Kip. Thank you. Everyone who's watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Have a great day, folks.
Goodbye.